They worked 16 hours a day. Children as young as 5 lost limbs in machines built to change the world. Cities turned black from coal smoke. Rivers ran thick with chemicals. And while millions suffered, a few got rich. This is the story of how the Industrial Revolution created the modern world, by breaking the old one. In the early 1700s, life was slow. Most people lived in small villages, farming the land just like their parents and grandparents had. Crops depended on the weather. If it rained too little or too much, people starved. There were no big cities, no factories, no electricity. Most clothes were made at home, by hand. If you wanted new shoes, someone had to make them from scratch, cut the leather, stitch it, and hope it fit. But under the surface, something was bubbling, something that would change everything. And it all began with a single machine. In 1764, a man named James Hargreaves invented something simple but powerful, the spinning jenny. Before this, spinning thread from wool or cotton was a slow, painful job. It took one person hours just to make enough thread for one piece of cloth. The spinning jenny changed that. Now, one person could spin 8 threads at once. Later versions could do 80 or more. That single invention sparked a wildfire. Soon, inventors across Britain were racing to build better machines. Richard Arkwright created the water frame, which used water power. Samuel Crompton made the spinning mule, blending the best of both machines. It wasn't just about cloth anymore. It was about speed, efficiency, and most of all, money. Machines were getting bigger and more complex. People could no longer keep them in homes. So, they built factories. Huge buildings with giant machines powered by water wheels and, later, steam engines. One factory could do the work of hundreds of people. But it needed workers. Lots of them. Families left farms behind. Villages emptied out. People rushed to cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and London, hoping for jobs. But life in the city was brutal. 10 people crammed into a single room. Children worked 12 to 16 hours a day. There were no safety laws, no weekends, no rest. If you were injured, you were replaced. If you complained, you were fired. It was progress, but it came at a price. In 1775, a man named James Watt took the steam engine and made it powerful and reliable. This changed everything. Factories no longer needed rivers. They could be built anywhere, including deep inside cities. But steam power wasn't just for spinning cotton. It powered trains, ships, and mines. Iron and coal became the new gold. Towns near mines grew into cities. Britain's underground was ripped apart to fuel the machines above. In 1804, the first steam-powered train ran on tracks in Wales. By the 1830s, trains were racing across the country at 30 miles per hour, blazing fast for the time. Suddenly, people and goods could move farther and faster than ever before. Time itself seemed to shrink. In the eyes of the factory owners, kids made perfect workers. They were small, cheap, and easy to control. Children as young as 5 were sent into coal mines or used to fix machines while they were still running. Many lost fingers, some lost arms, others didn't come back at all. No lunch breaks, no sick leave, no escape. And then there was the air. Coal dust filled people's lungs. Chemicals poisoned their water. Smog hung so thick in London that people called it the Great Smoke. Diseases spread fast. Life expectancy in factory towns dropped below 30 in some places. Progress was crushing the people it was supposed to help. Britain didn't keep its secrets for long. The ideas, and machines, spread to Europe, the United States, and eventually the world. In America, factories grew along the rivers of the Northeast. Cotton from the South, picked by enslaved people, fed the northern mills. In Germany, France, and Japan, governments pushed industrial growth to compete on the world stage. Soon, entire nations were transforming from farmland to factory zones. But this global wave also caused massive shifts. Wars were fought over resources. Colonies were drained for raw materials. Cities exploded in size. And for the first time, people began thinking of the future in terms of technology, not tradition. The Industrial Revolution didn't just change machines. It changed how we live, how we work, and how we think. Think about it. Public transportation was born from trains and steamships. The middle class emerged from factory managers and engineers. Schools became more important, so people could work in technical jobs. Politics shifted, with workers demanding better rights, forming unions, and pushing for laws. Even time itself changed. Factory whistles replaced church bells, and the idea of a work shift took hold. Electricity, cars, phones, computers, none of them would exist without the first wave of industrial change, and we're still feeling its effects today. Not everyone gained from the Industrial Revolution. The wealthy factory owners made fortunes. They built mansions, traveled the world, and shaped politics. But for millions of workers, especially women and children, life remained hard. They were the fuel that kept the machine running. Even today, we can still see echoes of that system. Factories in some parts of the world still run on cheap labor. Pollution from industry still chokes cities. And the wealth gap that started during the Industrial Revolution, it's only grown wider. Progress came at a cost. And some are still paying it. By the late 1800s, the world wasn't slowing down. In fact, things were speeding up, again. The first wave of the Industrial Revolution had already transformed how people worked, traveled, and lived. But a new, even more intense phase was just beginning. Historians call it the Second Industrial Revolution, and it changed the game all over again. This time, the power source wasn't just steam, it was electricity. Thomas Edison's invention of the light bulb in 1879 did more than light up rooms. It lit up entire cities. Suddenly, factories could run at night. Streets were no longer dark and dangerous. Homes were no longer ruled by candles and oil lamps. Life after sunset truly began. But it wasn't just electricity. New materials and inventions flooded the market. Steel, stronger and cheaper than iron, became the building block of bridges, railroads, and skyscrapers. The Bessemer process allowed for the mass production of steel, fueling urban expansion and enabling cities to grow upward, not just outward. Then came chemicals, synthetic dyes, fertilizers, explosives. Germany led the way in chemical engineering, using science to fuel both industry and, eventually, war. Perhaps the most revolutionary change was the rise of the assembly line. In 1913, Henry Ford introduced the moving assembly line in his car factory. Before this, building a car took over 12 hours. With the assembly line, just 90 minutes. This method didn't just change car manufacturing, it changed everything. Factories all over the world copied the model. Mass production meant lower prices. Lower prices meant more people could afford goods. This was the birth of consumer culture, people buying things not just because they needed them, but because they wanted them. Then came the Third Industrial Revolution, also known as the Digital Revolution, in the late 20th century. It wasn't powered by steam or electricity, it was powered by information. With the invention of computers, microchips, and eventually the internet, the world shifted again. Work moved from factories to offices. Machines didn't just lift heavy things, they began to think. Automobiles became automated. Factories became programmable. Banking went online. Entire industries vanished, while others exploded overnight. Now, we're on the edge of something even bigger: AI, automation, and robotics. Some call this the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Others say it's just the next chapter in a story that started over 250 years ago. One thing's for sure, just like before, those who adapt will move forward, and those who don't will be left behind. After everything the Industrial Revolution did, after the smoke, the machines, the child labor, the steam engines, the cities built from iron and coal, one question still echoes through history. Was it worth it? That question doesn't have a simple answer. If you look around today, it's hard to imagine life without what the Industrial Revolution created. Electricity, running water, trains, airplanes, the internet, medicine, skyscrapers. Every single one of these things has a direct connection to that era of machine-driven change. Before the Industrial Revolution, the average person lived a hard, short life. Most people never traveled more than 10 miles from where they were born. Education was rare. Poverty was everywhere. Diseases went untreated. Childbirth was dangerous. Food shortages were common. Today, the world looks very different. Modern hospitals, global communication, cheap clothes, supermarkets, schools, roads, and factories. All of it grew from the seeds planted during the Industrial Revolution. But the cost? It was enormous. Imagine being a 10-year-old child in 1840, working 14 hours a day in a dark, deafening cotton mill. Your hands are always cut and blistered. Your spine is already bending from the heavy loads. There's no school, no future. Just work until you break. Imagine living in a slum with open sewage in the streets, thick coal smoke choking the air, and drinking water that gives your children cholera. No one listens when you beg for help. You're just one more body in the factory machine. That was reality for millions during the 1800s and early 1900s. And not just in Britain or the US, as industrialization spread, these same harsh conditions were repeated in cities across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Workers were cheap, life was cheaper, even the natural world took a hit. Forests were cleared, rivers turned black, wildlife disappeared. The planet itself began to change as we burned more coal, more oil, more gas. The Industrial Revolution also reshaped power. Nations that industrialized quickly, like Britain, Germany, the United States, rose to global dominance. Those that didn't fell behind or were colonized. In Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and the Americas, entire cultures were overrun. Colonized people were used as labor and their land stripped for resources, rubber, cotton, sugar, coal, and more, all feeding the industrial machine in Europe. So again, was it worth it? If you were a wealthy factory owner in 1880, probably. If you were a child miner in Manchester, probably not. But history doesn't deal in fairness. It deals in change. The Industrial Revolution forced humanity into a new era, one where tradition had to make way for technology, where hand tools were replaced by steel machines, and where speed, efficiency, and profit ruled over all. Yet it wasn't all darkness. Out of the suffering came resistance. Workers began to organize. Unions were formed. Protests erupted. People demanded shorter hours, safer working conditions, and better pay. Slowly, governments responded with labor laws and reforms. It was painful, but it worked. Over time, child labor was banned. Safety regulations were introduced. Cities began cleaning up. Education became a right. Workers gained the ability to fight back, not with weapons, but with their voices. And that, too, is part of the legacy. The Industrial Revolution didn't just create machines. It created movements. It taught people to demand better jobs, better homes, better lives. It also gave rise to ideas that challenged the old world: capitalism, socialism, communism, industrial democracy. New economic systems were born, new political theories written, all in response to the chaotic birth of this new industrial age. And now, in the 21st century, we face another turning point: automation, artificial intelligence, climate change. We're entering what some call the fourth industrial revolution. And once again, we're asking the same questions. Who benefits? Who gets left behind? And what will it cost this time? If history has taught us anything, it's this: technology can build wonders, but it can also break lives. Progress is real, but it's never free. The people who benefit the most from revolutions are rarely the ones who suffer through them. So was the Industrial Revolution worth it? The world it created is the world we live in now. We can't undo it. We can't rewind time. But we can learn from it. We can choose to build a future that values people as much as progress. We can honor the workers, the children, the families who lived and died under the shadow of the smokestacks. And we can ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to build next?